You can look at a variety of examples of innovation in the market, and I'm really excited how the church is embracing some of those technologies. We don't have to invent cloud computing, but we can use it and we can just make it awesome.
This is Equip and Engage, a podcast by Subsplash, exploring how ministry, technology, and innovation come together to equip churches around the world to engage their communities.
Hi, and welcome to today's show. I am your host, Carolyn Farney, and we are continuing on our conversation around innovation. I'm joined today by one of our Subsplash team members, Nate Keck. Nate is a senior product manager here for us. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Carolyn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Now, when we invited you on, I knew there was one of two things we could talk about that you are an expert in. One being technology and innovation, two being college football.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they say it requires 10,000 hours to become an expert at something, and I feel pretty confident you've logged at least that. So, question being, are you starting a side podcast that we should be tuning into, or?
I'm not going to confirm the rumors are not true or are true. I will just say, go Dogs, go University of Washington football.
Better luck next year.
Oh, womp womp.
But so in terms of technology and innovation, this is absolutely an area that you've had a lot of experience in. We're so blessed to have you. You had a background in consulting, really working for some of the country and the world's biggest companies that when they have conversations around what technology are we going to put out, it changes culture. So a lot of influence there. So we're happy to have you with us. Now, as we kick this off, I thought, how about we start with just a definition of innovation? How would you define what innovation is?
That's a great question. Innovation at its simplest level is just problem solving. That can be big problems, that can be small problems, but it's problem solving. It doesn't have to be the latest thing to do with virtual reality, augmented reality, or whatever catchphrase you want to use. It's just problem solving, making something easier.
I love that. Now, as we start digging into I alluded to some of the companies that you worked with, getting a little bit of your background and story and how you got to Subsplash, maybe walk us through that journey.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small farm town outside of Seattle, and I went to the University of Washington, go Dogs, got my engineering degree and contemplated a few different paths there. I did spend a summer making torpedoes and a few missiles for a company called Raytheon. Super fun. Kind of whetted my appetite for not doing mainstream engineering, as it were.
Sure.
So I went into consulting, and not entirely sure what that meant. It was an IT consulting company called Accenture, and right off the bat I got staffed at AT&T and got thrown into a whole host of really cool things that I if you would have told me I was going to go into, I might have not been as interested, but once I got into it, I loved. At AT&T, I got exposure to launching some Samsung Galaxies, iPhones, other products they made. That led me over to Microsoft. I got to be a part of the Xbox One launch there, a few Surface launches, and that just kept on going. I did more project works at Microsoft. I got exposure to eBay and Google and Concur and probably a few more in there, and that was really great. As my time at Accenture continued to evolve, I got put on the road a lot more, and that kind of started to lead into my family life, right? Being traveling quite a bit. So
I was going to say, because then you also went to work for a small little company.
Yeah, you
right
may have heard of this one.
Out of Seattle.
Yeah, Amazon. Yeah. So I thought I was going to stay for a long time at Accenture, and the Lord had other plans. I got presented with a role. I said no, and God said, "Oh no, you're going to go."
He has a funny way of doing that.
Yeah. Sometimes at the time, unfortunate, but always love him for that. 6 months later, 7 months later, same role, same team was available, and I made the switch. I got to work on the Alexa team, so everything that had to do with Alexa or Fire TV, Kindle, Fire tablets, got to work across launches there. That was fantastic. Amazon is every bit of as innovative as you've heard it is. After some time there, though, it started to be a lot. It was again more stressful, a lot of hours.
Long hours.
Despite the exciting products, the title, some of those things. And so had this moment where the Lord said, hey, what are you going to choose? Are you, what floor you sit on, or are you title, or is it going to be me? And I said, okay, lesson learned, God. It's you. Where do you want me? And I looked at other roles at Amazon. I looked at a few other ones. I almost moved on to Mountain View for Google, and I ended up at Subsplash, which, at the time seemed like this passion project, but gosh, is this really, where my career goes? And what a blessing it's been just to be able to take some of the really cool things and be able to use technology and my heart for the church and marry them together. I never thought I'd get that opportunity to do it. So now I'm talking to you on this podcast.
I love it. So from your time at Accenture, in with Apple, companies like Google, obviously a history there with Amazon as well. What are some of the lessons that you learned from these big companies? What were those storylines that you saw play out that you thought, I'm going to take that and remember it?
Yeah, wow. Gosh, each one had such a unique take. But all of them had tremendously creative people who are looking to solve problems in new and unique ways. And that's the beauty of it, is being able to take people with different backgrounds and different viewpoints, put them together and solve problems. Really kind of that heart of innovation. Maybe if I look at a really good historical example of innovation, Microsoft had the tablet years before anyone else did. It was this clunky, probably 2-inch thick thing. They gave you a stylus, and the user interface was just a copy that everyone's used growing up, like Windows 95, Windows 98.
Sure.
Yeah, very familiar with it. And for a user though, that wasn't what they wanted to do. They didn't want to carry around a stylus and drag and drop files. Apple came along years later and realized that if I'm going to give people a product that they're going to carry around in their hand, they need to be able to use it with their hands. It requires a different paradigm. How do we innovate and solve that unique problem? And they use the interface they use in the iPhone, right? It's much more simple. It's much more streamlined. It's meant to be used with your finger. And of course, that market is what it is today. There's tablets everywhere. They are the king of that market. And all came through taking that problem and solving it, making it delightful, making it so simple that it was awesome to use. Yeah,
I love it. And I mean, even going back to there being a problem that was at hand that they were trying to solve with the tablet, and they launch it. It's not having the success. It required almost someone to, in this case, Apple, take a step back, think about it in a new way, and hear, the stylist and being able to simplify it. And now it's very well known, and it's part of a lot of our everyday lives. But any other examples that you had in that way?
Yeah, I mean, another great example that I got to work on was Alexa. So similarly, Microsoft and Google had the voice assistant built into Apple as well, built into their phones. What they didn't recognize, though, that it was frankly a little weird to people use the voice assistant on their phones. So if you're in an elevator thinking about what you're going to get on the way home for dinner, you wouldn't go, hey Siri, add eggs, broccoli, whatever to my shopping list. It's just kind of weird. It wasn't until Amazon realized, well, what if I just take away the buttons and I take away the screen and I force the end user to use their voice, where people are like, oh my gosh, I had to use my voice. Isn't that delightful? Isn't that cool? And of course, that category is also what it is today. It's huge. Everyone's got a voice product or some sort of voice integration.
Yeah, I love it because, I mean, in my mind, it really is. Apple was the iPad and didn't even know there was really a tablet before that. Alexa was the home voice. And like you said, for most people, you don't even realize there was something before that. And it comes to mind even like with the MP3 players. The iPod was the first very significant. This is where I listened to music digitally, where there were lots of other competitors on the market. It just... I think even as we think about, okay, how would this even apply to just me in my own context, that few of us are in the spot that we're trying to rethink voice activation or tablets. And maybe you are, which is awesome. Yeah. And we're really glad you're listening and tuning in. But how does someone in the church respond? What do we do to even try to keep up with that? Yeah. I mean, I think... so on the one hand, take their lesson of simplicity and delight and really letting that experience complement the user. So with everything that you're doing, how does it enhance the end user's experience? How do we make it more simple and more delightful? Leading in with that goal, but then also kind of embracing the reality and the beauty of the church doesn't have to keep pace with Apple or Google or Amazon. They're innovating at a tremendous pace. Like,
let's use their innovations and figure out how we can take them, repurpose them, and reach people with the gospel. Let's use their innovation. We don't have to do it. It's great.
I love it. And even some simple takeaways of sometimes when you have a problem, maybe this is me just stating the obvious, but being able to step back, bring in other voices that maybe see it with fresh eyes, to know maybe it's something we're not scrapping all together, but it just requires us to innovate on this.
Yeah.
So more of a way of thinking than just an actual kind of tangible 1, 2, 3, here's the steps you take.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can look at a variety of examples of innovation in the market, and I'm really excited how the church is embracing some of those technologies. We don't have to invent cloud computing, but we can use it and we can just make it awesome.
I love it. So what areas do feel ripe for innovation for you?
Yeah, gosh, I'm really excited about how we can continue to engage end users with content and with experiences where they're at. One story from my own life is when I was working at Amazon. I was taking the bus in every day, and my default would be to listen to University of Washington football podcasts. Go Dogs!
Go Dogs!
Go Dogs! Or another podcast. Maybe just browsing my Twitter, reading an article. I discovered an app though called Abide that was Christian meditation, and each day it'd be a new scripture, a little bit of context, a little bit of here's things to think about it, here's things that was going on at the time, here's how it's culturally relevant today. Think about it. What does that make you feel? What does that make you think? And it became such a light, just a way so woven into my routine. Taking the bus in and going into that environment and just being able to carry that with me eventually became my morning routine. And then my evening routine as I was coming home, sometimes in the middle of the day, using modern day technology to meet where I was at is something I'm super passionate about.
I love that. And even just we have this rich history of spiritual disciplines and Bible reading and prayer and meditation being something that we join believers of all ages in doing, and ways that we even use current means like these small computers that we keep in our pockets all day long, and how we can kind of cut through the noise with that.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible's 2,000 years old. They haven't revised it much recently, right? So, if you wanted to have someone preach a sermon on the woman at the well, it's largely the same 100 years ago it is today. Our cultural context changes. Some of understanding may change, but it's largely the same. My home pastor preached a sermon a few months ago on the passages in Joshua and Deuteronomy. And he's like, hey, these are going to be some challenging passages. And really it's, God telling the Israelites, all right, you guys get the promised land. First thing you're going to do, go in and kill everyone. And like today in our culture, like, whoa, like how do I tell a non-believer or how do I explain that? Like that seems really counterintuitive to who I know God to be. And it, for me, is illustrative of the Bible is so complex and takes study and care. I am so passionate and so excited about technology's ability to complement and say, well, we can equip all of God's people with the understanding of how God is restoring humanity and using these stories and these passages to point to who He is and give us context to be able to just engage the world with it.
I love it. Yeah, I've talked in episodes past of even just ways technology and media, making it the Bible and Scripture even more accessible today to more people. Now, who are some innovators that you look up to?
Yeah, gosh. In the secular space, I love Dropbox. Most people know them as a file storage system. For a long time, they do many other things now today. But what I love is just this delight and simplicity. I talked about, I think innovation is problem solving. When they first came out, they had, the magical box where you could drag any folder from your computer, put it in there and it'd store it, it'd format it. And all end users saw was that I'll drag it and it works. On the back end, they're accounting for so many different file types, so many different sizes, all these sorts of things, all this complexity. But they realized
very simple what is actually very complex.
Exactly. The user just wants it to work. And we should think about that same way. I love that product. It's fantastic. In the faith space, you and I talked about, we love the Bible Project. Love being able to help present both visually and with audio incredibly complex topics and make them accessible and reach them where people are at. That's on their phones, that's on their computers, that's on the go, that's with podcasts. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And really around the concept of, good technology should help you be more efficient, more effective. And so at the end of the day, you're trying to just use it to help people move from intention to action faster. Right. And there's different things competing for our time as seasons go. But well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We're going to continue this on in future episodes, and we hope you join us. There's a couple ways you can stay connected with us. So subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Share it with a friend. Also, if you take a few minutes to rate us in the store, it helps us become more visible for other people to find us as well. And then finally, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at podcast@subsplash.com. Whether it's questions, whether it's ideas you have for future episodes, we'd love your feedback there. And of course, as always, you can follow us at Subsplash. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Equip and Engage, where we're sharing insights learned from thousands of conversations with leaders and pastors around the world. To follow along with these conversations, subscribe today or visit our website.